you guys ready? One comment I wanted to make is that I've taught this class other places, and the thing that impresses me with your organization is that you got your gold sitting here. And I have to tell you that in some organizations they say, hey, you guys go take leadership classes, and we're going to bring in a class on leadership, and the members that are leading the organization may or may not be present, and you got your people here with you. So kudos to you guys. So. All right, I was given a gold badge and some bugles, and the chief says, I don't want to kill a firefighter on my watch, and I thought, okay, so, and to be honest, one of the things that did scare the hell out of me, I don't know that I have the emotional stability to go to a fire and leave a coworker behind. And I thought the best way to avoid that is for me to do some research and find out exactly what's killing our firefighters. And so I started reading NIOSH reports. And luckily I had consecutive back surgeries, so I had some downtime. And I was able to read actually more of these than I care to admit to. And when you read the NIOSH reports, there's recommendations in the back. And you don't have to read those because they all say the same thing. If you want to know what went right or what went wrong in a NIOSH report, you got to actually read it. And so I found some interesting things because I was looking for not what you died from. I didn't care if you were burned, or I didn't care if you were crushed, or I didn't care if you were asphyxiated. What led up to your death? What mistakes, what issues took place that ultimately cost you your life? And I found some interesting things. The cause of many of the fatalities were rudimentary and fundamental in nature. Simple little mistakes. The hydrant that didn't get taken, the hose line that came up short, the miscommunication, the wrong hose selection, any number of things that are fairly rudimentary. How many of you read anything about the 2 San Francisco firefighters that were just recently killed? I want to say a year ago. Okay. First engine company that got there is normally a 4-person engine company, but it was a 3-person engine company because somebody was having their mask fit done. The second engine company normally is a 4-person engine company, but somebody was grocery shopping, so they were 3. The first hose line came up short. Another hose line, there was miscommunication between the officer and the firefighter, and that one, there was difficulty there as well. When you read these NIOSH reports, read them and look for the fundamental mistakes, and you see them over and over and over again. Have you made fundamental mistakes on the fire ground? Yes, so have we. The other thing that I found is after the fatality, the organization makes sweeping changes. But what's interesting is, did they know there was an issue before the fatality occurred? Yeah. Did they know they didn't have good accountability? Did they know that there was an issue? Did they know their people didn't, know the policies and procedures as well as they should have? Yes. But they didn't do anything about it. So my question to you guys is this. If you killed a firefighter in your organization today, what policies, practices, philosophies, procedures would you change tomorrow? I can tell you in the city of Portland, we don't know our buildings. We've gotten away with it for years because firefighters came in, they went to a fire station, and they stayed there for the predominance of their career. What do we have today? You got firefighters coming in. We're more transient today than ever before, and we don't know the buildings. I looked at some of your buildings. I drove through downtown there. Can I pick out a commercial building, and can you tell me whether or not it has a basement? The Grove, the little theater there, does that have a basement? I got to tell you, knowing our buildings, and in Portland we don't know them, and it's going to get us caught. Because it's interesting that after the fatality, when everybody's putting the flowers in front of the building, they know everything about the building. We go and we do pre-fires, and we go through and we look at where the annunciator panel is located, and we look at where the gas shutoff is, and we look at all this stuff that none of you are going to remember. What I would ask you to do is tell me what's in it, what's it constructed out of, does it have a basement? Next building. What's in it? What's the construction? Does it have a basement? Can you tell whether a commercial building has a basement or not? No. You got smoke pouring out of the building. You don't know if it's in the basement. You don't know if it's on the first floor. You don't know where the fire is located. When you pull up on a residential structure, can you pretty much determine where the fire is located? Yeah. Can you determine whether there's a basement? Yes. So again, in Portland, that's one of the things. And again, if we killed a firefighter today, guess what we'd be doing tomorrow? We'd be going out and learning those buildings. So what goes wrong? What fundamental things go wrong?
Communication.
Communication, 100% of the time. Every time there's an issue with communication. What else?
Training.
Training? Okay. What goes wrong on the fire ground? What mistakes do you guys make?
Oh, the best of it is a failure to do 360.
Didn't do okay? Inappropriate size up? Okay. Or failure to give a good size up? Complacency, thank you. I got to tell you, our job in the fire service is to prevent complacency from creeping in. Do we get complacent? I think it's the #1 killer in the fire service is complacency. What else goes wrong? How about hose line selection? Okay? You guys go to residential structures 80% of the time? Okay? You pull up on a commercial building, guess what hose line you grab? 1 3/4. And in the door you go. Okay? Interestingly enough, and I need to make sure that I have my facts straight, but do we kill more people in residential as compared to commercial? Yes or no? We kill more people in residential. But interestingly enough, that's because 80% of what you do is residential. If I compare an equal number of commercial and residential, 100,000 each, we're killing 3.1 in the residential, we're killing 11.6 in the commercial. You guys have a tendency to apply residential tactics to commercial buildings. You're creatures of habit. When you go to a residential building, you're 10 feet away from any opening. When you go to a commercial building, what kind of openings do you have? Very few. You pull up in front of a residential structure, you can identify where the fire is located. When you pull up on a commercial building, where's the fire located? You have no idea. When you go into a residential structure, you do a left-hand search, right-hand search. You go into a commercial building, do a left-hand search, right-hand search, you might as well just stay in there because you're not coming back out. Be on a hose line, be on a lifeline, or don't be in there. But again, we don't do the commercial stuff enough. We have a tendency. I listened to Sullivan from Worcester, Massachusetts speak. Maybe some of you have heard him. And he said that's what we did there. We applied residential tactics to a commercial building. And it got some of their people killed, 6. How about poor apparatus placement? Does that get you guys sometimes? How about improper line selection, radio communication, freelancing, lack of team continuity, applying offensive tactics to a defensive situation, lack of equipment maintenance, failure to evaluate risk versus benefit, lack of equipment knowledge or familiarity. This is a super sofa fire. That guy right there normally doesn't drive. The reason why he's driving today is because the normal driver is doing what? He's acting. He's the lieutenant. So this is your normal firefighter who is now going to be your driver today. Do we do this? Do you come to work and somebody says, hey, we need a driver? They say, do you want to drive? What do you say? No. Sure I will. Sure I will. Do firefighters want to have the opportunity to drive? Yeah. So you jump in the seat. Unfortunately for him, there's a nuance with the pump that he's not familiar with. When shifting the lever downward from the top position, proper operation calls for a pause in the center neutral position momentarily before bringing the lever to the completed downward position. Failure to pause at the center neutral position can cause a long, excessive delay in engaging of the pump. He doesn't know this. He can't get him water. The only reason why the captain's alive is because he came out to figure out why they couldn't get water. Guess what they took into the building? What hose line did they take? And then that came up short. which if I showed you an aerial of the building, you would realize why it came up short. Huge building. They walked into the building and it looked just like this. Very little smoke. But unfortunately, they had a dropped ceiling, and the space between that dropped ceiling and the roof was 5 feet, almost tall enough to stand up in. And the loading dock where the fire was located, there was a vent. And all of the products from the furnishings and the lacquers and everything else was going up and filling that space above them with those products of combustion. That eventually flashed, and that took the conditions from this to zero visibility. At one point they looked up and they saw a small fire up at the ceiling level. And those are the fires that get us, because when you walk into a building and it looks like this, are you paying attention to any of your landmarks? No. This is a fire in LA that killed a captain. They were following the hose line out. Firefighters located a hose line and were following the hose line out, but discovered they were going back into the building or into the structure when they reached the nozzle. Is it a fundamental skill for me to be able to blindfold you, have you feel a coupling, and tell me which way's in, which way's out? Is that a fundamental skill? Yeah. We did it with our people. 50% of them couldn't tell us in or out. Then we said, give us a mayday. We have a tendency to do coffee table training. We have a tendency to put a slide up on the board like we're doing here and saying, if you were in a situation where you had to call a mayday, you're going to say this, and you're going to say that, and you're going to say this, and we give you instructions. Remember what we said about stress? What level of stress do you have on you when you think you're fighting for your life? What's your decision-making ability like? What we need to do is say, give me a mayday right now. Give me a mayday. Put people in a simulated type of situation where they have to give a mayday. Not talk about it, but training where you actually have to do it. One of the drills that I want to do is to have companies come out and they're training, and you take a piece of cyclone fencing, and it has a frame around it with cyclone in the middle. And as you black them out, they're doing a search and rescue drill. And as they're doing the drill, you take the fencing with another member, they can't see you, and you literally just start forcing the firefighter to the ground. You force them to the ground, and you see what they do. What do you think they'll do? Do you think they'll grab the radio and give a mayday? No. In fact, we had a firefighter, you talk about leadership, we had a firefighter build a prop for us, had some stairs. You'd go up the stairs, you'd crawl onto a sheet of plywood, and when you got to a certain point, the plywood would tip and you would slide down onto some mattresses. We went to a building that we put the prop inside. I told a firefighter, I said, listen, here's the scenario. Inside the building is a crew already inside. I want you to follow this hose line and I want you to make contact with them. If at any time you feel like you're in trouble or there's any situation where you might want to give a mayday, please feel free to do so. They're free. In fact, give 2. Okay, Chief. In he goes. He's blacked out, following the hose line, up the stairs, plunk, he falls on the mattresses. Well, it's encased with wood, so you can't get out. We're all standing around watching. So we say, okay, you've fallen, what are you going to do now? He says, well, can I get out of here? We said, yeah, there's an opening at the end, but we don't know if you can fit through there. So what did he do? Tried to fit through. Then he came back and we said, okay, you can't get through, what are you going to do now? He says, do I have my axe? I said, yeah. He says, I'm going to start chopping my way out. I said, do you want to give a mayday? Oh, yeah, I'll give a mayday. That's not a reflection of him. It's what we all would do, for the most part. I think we're getting better. But we need to do training where we're not telling you to give a mayday, we're putting you in scenarios where you have to give a mayday. Is this a drill you could do with your company? Yeah, absolutely. And that's what keeps us safe. Little snippets of training all the time. Little bits of training. We don't need a lesson plan. We go out on the drill ground, we stick a cone, we lay in, we use our turret, and we hit the cone, we pick up, and we go home. Little snippets of training all the time. I read Tony Dungy's book, kind of admired him. I thought he was a man of character. His son killed himself. I wanted to read about that situation and what he went through. And when I read about him, I learned what it takes to be a Super Bowl championship team. It takes absolute perfection at every level. When you think about the caliber of the football teams and the talent on each of these teams, it's incredible. But in order to be a Super Bowl championship team, you need to be perfect. You need to be perfect on defense. You need to be perfect on offense. You need to be perfect with special teams. Your coaches have to gel. It all has to come together. Chuck Noll was Tony Dungy's mentor. Chuck Noll won 4 Super Bowls with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was his philosophy. And if I could interject this into the fire service tomorrow, I would. Ordinary and fundamental. They're not going to do anything tricky. They're just going to be better than everybody else. And again, when we look at the fundamental things that go wrong, if your firefighters are fundamentally sound, you're giving them a fighting chance to go home the next day. And if we're not good with our equipment, if we're not good fundamentally, we're in trouble. We'll talk again about expectations. And that sounds just like a simple thing to do. I'm going to put some things down here on a piece of paper. I'm going to tell people what I want, and they're going to do them. And I'm going to be a leader, and I'm going to be great. That's not the intention of the expectation. What I realized when I was a battalion chief going to incidents, whether it was a pin-in, whether it was a fire, and I was seeing things that I didn't like, what I realized is that it was putting me in a situation where I was reactionary. If there's somebody that doesn't have full turnouts on, now I'm watching this pin-in, I can go over and say, here, come out. Now I'm affecting patient care. But I found myself in a situation that I was reacting. The fact of the matter is, we got to do the work before we get to the fire ground. We have to do the work before we get to the emergency scene. I started defining expectations for people. I started saying, here's exactly what I want. When we have a pin in, I want full turnouts and I want safety glasses. That's what I want. And they started doing it. Anything that I saw that wasn't what I wanted it to be, I came back and said, guys, here's what I really need from you. Again, when you tell them what it is you want specifically, they do it. I want you, as a supervisor, to define the things that are important to you. I want you to define your expectations. Like I said, as they pertain to training, as they pertain to the workplace, the environment in the workplace, as they pertain to emergency response, what specifically do you want from your people? Provide it in writing. The organization has expectations, but I want to know, what are your personal expectations? And let me ask you, are your personal expectations more influential than the organizational expectations? Are the expectations that you have for yourself more of a motivator for you than the organizational expectations? See, we have organizational expectations, and I have 30 fire stations, so that means that every fire station would be the same. But that's not the case. Because I have a captain by the name of Joe Budge. When I go to Joe's station, Joe has personal expectations for himself, and his station is wired tight. Not because of the expectations that the organization puts on him, but he's a guy that does the job and does it well because that's what Joe expects of himself. And I realized that your personal expectations are vitally important. Put it in writing. Tell your people what it is you want. It promotes your employees' success, it prevents injuries and fatalities, and it prevents conflict. How many people enjoy conflict? If you enjoy conflict, you got problems. Okay? Nobody likes it. And the beauty of sitting down and talking about expectations is I can say, hey, you guys, I'd like to sit down at 10 o'clock with you. I'd like to go over some expectations. I'd like to know what you guys expect from me. It's 360 degrees, so what do you need from me? Here's what I expect from you. And you know what? I'm not calling anybody out. It's just us discussing it. It's fresh in their minds. They know what I want, and it happens. Number one reason for employee-supervisor conflict is because of lack of expectations. People simply don't know what it is you want from them. Okay. What do you do when you're backing an apparatus? What's the policy say? Okay. I know none of you have ever backed an apparatus without somebody back there. We do in our organization sometimes, but I know none of you do. I worked for 2 officers. What's that? I worked for 2 officers. One said early on, by the way, you guys, just so you know, The apparatus actually doesn't go in reverse without somebody back there. The transmission literally doesn't work. Just so you know. And he said it just like that. He said it literally doesn't back up. Another officer, he didn't say anything. Our policy said you'll be back there, but he didn't say anything about backing. So we'd pull up to the station, we'd go to back up, or we'd come to a stop. I'd look at the other firefighter, he'd look at me, and the engine would go back into the station. We'd get out. You know, it was raining. I didn't want to mess my hair up. When I worked at the other station and the rig came to a stop, guess what we did? We got out. We knew. And again, the policy hasn't changed, but for some reason when we say, hey, in a nice way, this is what it's got to be. You know what? They do it. This kid backs the apparatus in. Okay? The chief's walking around in the back. He doesn't see him. Or he sees him and then he backs in. Doesn't have a backup person back there. He realizes he's really close to this other apparatus, so he pulls back out again. And he backs up and he positions it where it's at. He gets out to find that he's crushed his chief right there, and he dies right there. So again, when you talk about expectations with people, they never actually do, or I should say, they don't do the act. It prevents the fatality from ever happening because they do what it is you ask them to do. What's your policy? And I look at the roads around here, and I can tell you that one of the things we don't give its just due is us standing on the road. I don't know that there's too many things that you guys do that's as dangerous as standing out on a highway. I worked at Station 24 and we covered I-5 north and south. I can tell you there is no safe place on a freeway. Okay? Sit down with your people and talk about your expectation for freeway response. First time we went out the door, I got guys with no helmets. They got no reflective vests. Some guys over here, some guys over there. We got back to the station. I said, listen, we need to talk about our freeway response. You will have a helmet on. It will have a chin strap secured, because if you're hit and the chin strap's not on, it's flying off your head. I want you in a turnout coat or a vest. If we need 1 lane and 1 inch, we're taking 2. The apparatus will shield our people as we're working. Here's a situation. This kills 1 firefighter. The blue car here, and I'll see if I can make this work. No. Anyway, you see the blue and gray cars. See where the apparatus are positioned. They're fighting the wildland fire there. The cars come between the apparatus and the guardrail and kills 1 and seriously injures another. What should our apparatus look like? It should look like that, correct? That thing's there to protect you guys. And again, these are simple things. These are just discussions that you're having. And we talk about little snippets of training. What I would encourage you to do is on a regular basis find a policy, whether it's freeway response, whether it's RIT, whether it's whatever, and just briefly go over the policy with them, talk about what your expectations are and what you expect. If an officer sits down and goes over this with his company and they perform the way that he asks them to perform, this never happens. Okay, is a radio report a fundamental skill? Okay? Here's where we falter. We don't give specifics. I say to, what's your name?
Trevor.
What?
Trevor.
Trevor. Trevor, when you get inside there, give me a radio report. What did I just tell him to do? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. How many of you have had a discussion with your company officer about what that radio report will consist of? Okay, good, excellent. Okay, what do we want that radio report to consist of? Because before you do that, let me say that what you're giving me is an interior size-up. What are you required to do when you arrive first on a building? Got to give a size-up, right? And your name again? Your first name?
Ty.
Ty. So if you don't give a size up, Ty is going to come over and kill you. Okay? Isn't that the policy? Ty's coming to kill you if you don't give a size up. But interestingly enough, I send you into the building I can't have the interior size up. We realized as chief officers that we've got brand new firefighters on the end of a hose line going into a building, and so much of what we do is dictated by what they say to us, but yet we weren't telling them exactly what it was we wanted. We said, give us a radio report. That means absolutely nothing. So what do we want in our radio report? Can report, conditions, okay? Actions, needs, okay? Air.
Conditions, actions, area.
Okay? Here's what I conveyed to my people. Location, location. I need to know where you're working in the building, but I also need to know where you're working, because many times I pull up on a building, and we're talking about an apartment building that takes up a city block, and you tell me we're on the second floor. What are you telling me? Nothing. We're on the second floor, we've found the fire. Okay, 4-story building, you're on the 3rd floor, and you tell me we've found the fire, it's in the Alpha Bravo corner of the structure. Where am I putting my resources on the floor above? Alpha Bravo corner. So much of what you tell me is dictating what I do with my resources. If I think I've got extensions, I need them above you. You tell me we're on the 2nd floor, Alpha Bravo corner, we've found the fire. And again, sometimes you pull up and you can see it. You know where it's located. Other times you got smoke pouring out of a building, or we got nothing showing. We know we've got a fire someplace, but we don't know where. The other thing is that with location, the acid test for me as an incident commander is, if I never get another radio transmission from you, can I send you help? That's the acid test. The fallacy is that you're going to give me a mayday. Nothing further from the truth. In most cases, you won't get a mayday, and if you do get a mayday, it's coming from someone who witnessed the person that's in trouble, not the person that's in trouble. Because what's the person in trouble doing? They're fighting for their life. They're not going to go, oh yeah, I need to give a mayday. Not going to happen. Sometimes, on rare occasions, they will. But in most cases, the person who witnesses it, or you get nothing at all. Worcester, Massachusetts, they got 4 maydays, or they got 4 firefighters that called and said, we're in trouble. 2 of them, they never heard a word from. It wasn't until they came outside and said, okay, we've got everybody, no, we're missing 2 people, and they realized they had 6 gone, not 4. Location, location, okay?
Hillsdale.
What's that?
Hillsdale. Good example.
Yep. We dropped 2 firefighters through a hole in the floor. They fell 11 feet 6 inches. Radio flew out of their pocket when they hit the ground. We got emergency traffic. And then everybody else on the fire ground, because they had something really important to say, bowled right over the top of them. Never got a mayday. We had a guy come out and say, I just fell through the floor. That was the first we realized. The person that was backing him up, or a partner with him, heard him scream. They crawled in a window. They couldn't get through the front door because it was barred or something. So he said, I'm going to go through the window, I'm going to go around, and I'm going to open the door. Well, initially they tried to force the door and they damaged the lock. So then they went in the window, they came around to the door. He tried to open it from the inside. It still wouldn't open. He came back to the window. The neighbor said when they pulled up, they're in there. He said, I'm going to go search. He went. He made it about 4 or 5 feet. The other guy was at the window. He heard him scream. He crawled in, went in, fell too. The radio flies out of his pocket. Now, we've got a radio lying on the ground, which is getting wet, and we lose our fire channel. We lose our talk group. I have asked our organization, to no avail, to say, when we go to a fire, we don't just go on 1 talk group. We go on 2. If you're on Ops 3 and you lose that channel, with a given period of time, you automatically migrate to the one above. Because what happens when you lose that channel? You got nothing. You're literally face to face. You've got nothing. So if we go to the fire and we go with 2 channels, we know that after a given period of time, people will migrate to the one above. So when you go to a fire, you go on Ops 3, you go on Ops 4. Somebody else goes on Ops 4, or on Ops 5 and Ops 6. But we haven't been able to get it done. Heat conditions. Is heat important? You talked about changes. You know what we've done with you? We have fully encapsulated you. It used to be that we could feel the heat. We literally couldn't get ourselves into serious situations because we couldn't stand the pain of the heat that we were going to feel if we kept pushing forward. We would get lower, 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 and eventually we'd come to a stop because we couldn't continue. Excuse me. Now, you guys are fully encapsulated. Tell me about the environment that you're in right now. Is the environment more volatile today than ever before?
Yes.
Acrolein is one of the most prevalent chemicals in the products that are in this room. Acrolein is in this chair. It has an incredibly low flash point. We are seeing environments today that we've never seen before, that are more volatile than they've ever been. You're fully encapsulated. When you tell me you're hot, what are you telling me? This is a serious situation. You guys are hot. What else are you prompting me to do? What do you need? You need ventilation. What else might you need? If I know it's hot and I know I need ventilation, I'm going to get you a backup line to protect you in case something goes wrong. That might be the catalyst for me to call a greater alarm. Again, I've got 2 brand new people on the end of a hose line dictating to the incident commander what my directions are on the fire ground, and we're not giving you the information that you need, or we're not giving you the steps to take to get us the information that we need. If you tell me we've got no visibility and we've got no heat, what are you telling me?
Not in the right place.
You're not where the fire's at. And again, sometimes we pull up and we say it's right there, up the stairs, down the hall, boom, we're there. Other times we've got smoke pouring out of a building. You tell me we're on the 2nd floor, we've got no visibility and we've got no heat. Now we're looking for the fire by process of elimination. You guys stay on that floor, let me get somebody underneath you. How about the fire where I get you on the floor, you say we got no visibility, no heat. We might have a basement. Lo and behold, we've had it happen to us a number of times. Doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally we get caught. Fire's in the basement. When we get there, it appears it's on the 1st floor. It might even appear that it's on the 2nd floor. It's originating in the basement. What kind of heat conditions do you have? What kind of visibility do you have? Possible extension, that's obvious. Hazardous conditions. This is one of the transmissions that never gets made. I went to Freightliner. We had a propane tank that exploded. We get there, smoke pouring out of the building. My firefighters jump off the apparatus. They go into the smoke. A little bit later, I see one of them come out. He jumps up. He forgot to grab the tick. Perfect. He grabs the tick. He goes back in. After the fire, I said, hey, you came and got the tick. He goes, yeah. As we were going in, a responsible party said, hey, be careful. There's mechanical pits in the floor. So you walk down the stairs, you can work underneath. Okay? Do you think that's important for other people to know? Yeah. Hazardous conditions need to be reported to command, whether it's a down power line, hole in the floor, whatever the case may be. What we've done sometimes is said, hey, you guys, look out. You get your crew, you get your people around it, and you continue on. If it's hazardous for you, it's hazardous for everybody. Changing conditions. This is the one transmission that never gets made. You guys come into the building, it looks like this. It starts to get smokier. It starts to get hotter. It starts to get more, the heat becomes more intense. At any time does anybody say, hey, command, conditions are starting to change. What happens is command gets caught flat-footed because the last transmission they got was that visibility was good. Boom, the bad thing happens, and now your incident commander out in the streets ill-prepared. How about overcrowding? Is this an issue? Is it an issue for you guys? And you guys are a fairly small organization, correct? What is the responsibility of a backup line? Protect the means of egress. What are we doing? We are leaving our boot print on the back of the crew in front of us to get first water on the fire, correct? If you are backing up a crew and you are in the same environment that they are in and it flashes, who are you backing up? Nobody. If you are on the floor with the fire attack crew and the floor fails, who are you backing up? Nobody. This is an issue that has gone on in the fire service since I came in, and if I do one thing before I leave here, it's to change this. Folks, we need to take care of fire attack. Fire attack is our objective. If you're a backup line, what's your objective? Protect fire attack. Get yourself in a position where if the bad thing happens, whether it's failure or a flashover, that you're in a position where you now can respond. 71% of the time, the grab is from the backup team. When a firefighter says they're in trouble, 71% of the time, the backup team gets them. You know what percent of the time the RIT team gets them? About 5. About 5. If you position yourself accordingly, you're going to make a difference. If you don't, then you're not. And we've been trained. Have you guys done the training where you go in, you locate the firefighter, you get them on air, you get them a radio, and we're going to burn the building down around them? Have you guys done that training? Okay, I have too. Guess what the reality is? That's not what's going to happen. You have a very small window of opportunity to make a difference. If we could go in and get them out, we would. But we can't because the environment that they're in is not survivable. Flashover is what's going to get us. Changing environments is what's going to get us. You can't be in there. The fallacy that we're going to go in and put you on air and protect the building and burn it down around you is not what happens. I found 2 scenarios out of all the scenarios I looked at where there was a long drawn out extrication. The rest of them were they're in trouble, they need out now. When you read the reports, it says greater alarm companies were not involved in the rescue. Why is that? They're either dead or they're out. Okay? Very small window of opportunity to make a difference. If you have RIT and you don't have an access point determined for you, if you hear Mayday and you have to do anything before you enter the building, you're not doing your job. You're all done. It's like setting the blocks for the 100-yard dash and hearing the gun go off. Here's another fallacy about RIT. Center hallway apartment. We go up the stairs, we go down the hallway, crews working in the apartment building. When there's a Mayday, does everybody in the building run out? No. What do? They migrate to the rescue. Your RIT team is never getting to the firefighter. They're at the back of the bus. They're at the end of the hallway behind all the other firefighters that are trying to effect a rescue. What's the only way that you're going to play a part in that rescue? What do you have to do? Find your access. Find your access that's independent of the rest of the accesses. Again, when we did training, we brought you in, firefighters clearing the back of the building. We intentionally made you search. You got to the firefighter, oh, your bell's ringing. You got to come back out. And then we communicated and we sent a new group of people in. Folks, if we're going all the way into the building that far, we're taking the wrong entrance. If your people are working above grade, throw ladders. Pick your access. Go to the back of the building. Here's our access. It's our access independent of all the other resources that are working in this building. If there's an overhead door, get the saw, cut it open, get your tools there, you're ready to hear Mayday. Very small window of opportunity. Instruct firefighters not to overcrowd the area. This is a young firefighter. He goes in, he's at the front of the line, he's got the nozzle. Conditions deteriorate, everybody turns, now he's at the back. He can't get out, he tries to go out another way, and he gets lost and he dies. This is a fire in New York. What's the $64 million question with any basement fire? What's the one thing I want to know about the basement fire? Does it have an exterior entrance? Is a fire in a basement with an exterior entrance different than a fire in a basement that you have to go interior? Absolutely. If you have a choice between sending people down a flight of stairs inside a building or bringing them around to the back and going through a door, which one are you going to take? It should be automatic. If you think you've got a basement fire, you need somebody on that fire ground to determine, do we have an exterior entrance to the basement? Okay? Stairs are going up. What does that indicate? Basement. Okay? You can see the soot coming out of the window right there. This is in New York. 5 firefighters are standing on this landing. Okay? This comes down from the front. The doorway that you saw, they make this corner and they head down 2 feet 10 inches wide. There's a bicycle, there's a coat rack, there's a bunch of crap here. Okay? Conditions deteriorate, they try to go back out. One firefighter gets his helmet knocked off because they're all crowded in this little landing. Again, where's our backup team? They're right there with the fire attack team. He gets entangled. 9 New York firefighters go to the hospital with burns on this. He dies right there. The way they get him out is they come in, they hook a rope to his SCBA, the loop on his SCBA, they run the rope out to the front yard, and they literally just yard him out. Because they would get to him, they'd get a hold of him, conditions were so intense, so hot, they'd suffer burns, and they'd go back out, they'd send other people in to get him. It didn't work until they hooked the line and jerked him out of there. Here's the back of the building. What do we have right here? Exterior entrance, the chief officer arrives, they find the exterior entrance, they force entry, now they make their push in this direction. What does that do to the stairs? What does that do to the smoke and everything going up the stairs? Okay? Here's what I started doing. First of all, firefighters it's a great problem to have. If you guys didn't want to get in there, if you didn't want to get first water on the fire, I would say we've got an issue. So it's a great problem to have. But the fact of the matter is that we're there to protect fire attack. And so when you bring your nozzle up to the landing here, we've asked you to make a 360, correct? Can you do that? What if you make a 360? What if you set your nozzle down right there and make a 360? What happens? Yeah. Why? Why? Do you go to the roof and see a guy stand there with an axe and go over and take his axe? Do you go over and take his saw? If you didn't bring the hose line, it doesn't belong to you. That's their line. If you want to bring a hose line, you bring your own. If I could change one thing, it would be that. Our people can't even set a hose line down long enough for them to go to the side of the building and take a look because somebody else is going to grab it. What is that? That's ego. I read about ego, and the book was titled, Your Greatest Asset or Your Worst Liability. And I thought initially that ego was an issue, that it was just negative. But the fact of the matter is we need ego. Ego is why we have police officers. Ego is why we have soldiers. Ego is why we have firefighters. There's healthy ego and there's unhealthy ego. 2 of the characteristics for bad ego. 1 is being comparative. Are we comparative? I worked at Station 24. We would run over women and small children to beat Station 8 to the fire. Okay? That's ego. When you peel away all the layers of the onion, what should we be doing? We should be driving safely and we should be getting there when we get there. Okay? Being comparative. The other thing is when you're doing things to draw attention to yourself. Okay? When you go onto the fire ground, if you got fire attack, great. If you got backup line, great. If you're traffic control, you're traffic control. Do it and do it well. We're there to support the people that are inside the structure, our fire attack crews, our primary search crews, and that's what we need to be doing. It's interesting to me that when you talk about a football team, you can tell me who the quarterback is, you can tell me who the running backs are, you can tell me who the receivers are. You can't tell me the name of one offensive lineman, and without them, you got nothing. There are times when you're going to be the offensive lineman, there's times when you're going to be the quarterback. Bottom line is, we need to keep ego off the fire ground. I was going to make another point. Okay, so we don't have an exterior entrance. So what's our next concern? What are we thinking? You can say it out loud. Where's the access to the basement, right? But what's interesting is that when you run onto that floor, are you thinking about what you're standing on? We don't. We don't sound. We're looking for that entrance to the basement. If I put you on a roof and I say, you've got fire underneath of you, man, you're sounding, you're paying attention, you're staying out to the edge of the building. Not a basement fire. Many basements are unfinished, correct? No sheetrock. So with a lightweight building, you've got flame impingement on structural members. And a lot of these big homes now, they finish the main floor, they finish the top floor, they leave the daylight basement unfinished. You've got a lightweight building that's going to have flame impingement on the structural members very, very early on in the incident. Think about what you're walking on when you make entry into a basement fire. Okay, where was I? Lost my train of thought. Okay, what the heck. Have you guys heard of the Black Sunday? Okay, that was in New York. They killed these two guys, or they killed this guy in the morning, and then I believe in the afternoon they had these 6 guys jump out the window of the apartment building. Bad day for New York. Okay, so what's our solution? What's our solution to overcrowding? What is it? As new company officers, first of all, you guys are blowing, you're going in there, you're going to get first water on the fire, and that's a great problem to have. We need some discipline on your part. But one of the things that happens as new company officers, true or false, you're checking the boxes, correct? I got fire attack, I got backup line, I got primary search. Okay, let's see, yeah, go ahead and search the floor above. We don't necessarily pay attention to the amount of people that we're putting in a given space. When you're dealing with a large apartment building, I'm sitting outside the apartment building. I'm looking at a building that takes up a city block. You're actually working in a 500 square foot apartment. If I send all the people in according to the size of the building, I'm going to pack you guys in there like cordwood, and I'm going to create a dangerous situation for you. So as incident commanders, pay attention to the number of people you're putting into a given space. The other thing I started doing as an IC, I would say, Engine 1, I'd like you to pull a backup line for Engine 2, back them up on the second floor. I'd like you on the front porch. I would give them a destination to go to. That way, your name again?
Ty.
Ty. If they don't, Ty will go and kill them. So again, as an IC, I would say, I want you, is there any reason that we need a backup line inside of a 1,000 square foot house? No. No. Front porch. If you are the backup line for a crew on an upper floor, if you can get onto that floor and safely find a position, wonderful. If you can't, base of the stairs. Wait for the bad thing to happen and then make your push. Identify overcrowding as a safety issue. If we kill a firefighter here or in Portland tonight because of overcrowding, what's our policy tomorrow? Do we change it? Yeah. You bet you do. You bet you do. This has been going on since I came in. This is ridiculous. We need to see it for what it is. It's a safety issue. I can't tell you how many times I thought I'm going to burn to death here because I can't get out of here. And we just keep doing it. See it as a safety issue. Somebody's got to take the bull by the horns and say, you know what, we're going to make a change. We haven't killed anybody with it, so we haven't made the change. Appropriate use of resources, again, that's your IC, not putting too many people in there. Location of the backup line, give them a specific location to go to. And here's the other thing. Do you guys feel that you can get on the radio and say, it's overcrowded? Can you do that? Yes. That's that interior size up that I'm talking about. I told all the officers and firefighters I work with, if it's crowded, tell me so. I'm outside, I can't see. If it's crowded, I can back somebody out, or I can look at my status board and go, that's funny, I've been real disciplined with the number of people that I put in there, and then I find that somebody has migrated onto that floor that didn't belong there, and then I get to call Ty. Here's the thing I realized about fatalities. Obviously, it's better to prepare than to repair. We don't have an understanding of the magnitude of a fatality. We look at stats every year and we say 100 people died last year. It's not 100 people. It's not firefighter X and it's not firefighter Y. It's Ty, it's Tom. You know what? When you look at organizations that have had fatalities, they're absolutely dreadful. The organization is never the same. We want nothing to do with this. And here, it's unfortunate. It's tragic when you lose a firefighter. But here's where it gets incredibly tragic, is when you say, if only. If only. If only we would have been ready when we were assigned RIT, we could have got to them. If only we would have been in a better position as a backup line, we could have got to them. If only, if only. You guys go to a fire and you come back and it went relatively well, what's the first thing you say to yourselves? What could we have done better? Sully lands the plane in the Hudson. He takes off, he loses his motors, he lands in the Hudson. They fish him out of the water, they take him to a hotel, he lays down on his bed, and the first thing he thinks is, I wonder what I could have done differently. I don't know what a successful water landing looks like, but that was pretty impressive to me. Okay, we do it to ourselves. We do not, I don't have the emotional strength to come back from a fire and say, if I would have called a second alarm earlier, if I would have done things differently, that I would have a firefighter here today that I don't have. I don't have the strength for it. I don't want anything to do with it. And I think for you guys, it's no different. I'm the IC, but you guys are on the lines. You're RIT, you're backup. You're going to be playing a part of this as well. We want to be able to come back, and the only saving grace in all this is we're going to be able to say this was an unforeseen circumstance. We lost a firefighter. There was nothing we could have done. The true tragedy begins when you have to say, if only. Okay. A little bit of fireground stuff. Now let's jump back to the leadership stuff. How do we implement a program we don't agree with? I know this doesn't happen here, but it happens in Portland sometimes. How do we do it? How do we get buy-in? No, you don't agree with it either.
You gotta act like you do.
You got to act like you do. How do we do it? How do we implement that program that we don't agree with?
You get started by looking at the program and evaluating the actual meeting for it.
Thank you.
By it yourself.
Now, Chief, I could be wrong here, but I want to assume that there wasn't a day that you've come to work yet where you said, you know, I wonder if I can make the firefighter's job more difficult.
Well, that was today.
That was today. Yeah, that was today. I can tell you that no chief I've ever worked for came to work and said, I want to make it more unsafe. I want to make it more